A Russian rocket attack in Ukraine killing at least 15 people and wounding some 50 more. The deadly barrage falling on the 6-month mark of Russia's invasion. This latest grim milestone comes as Ukraine celebrates its independence from the Soviet Union. And as bloody battles push on throughout the region, the U.S. is pledging to send another $3 billion to help the fight. CBN's Brody joins us now with that report. Brody?
Caitlin, fear overshadowed celebrations of freedom in Ukraine today. The country's president warned the Russians would attempt something particularly cruel on this day. Ukraine gained its independence in 1991 with the Soviet Union's collapse. Wednesday's somber holiday also coincides with 6 months of war. Ukraine police increased patrols, including strict enforcement of the nighttime curfew. News reports indicate the U.S. shared intelligence with Ukraine about the heightened risk of Russian strikes on civilians in town centers. President Volodymyr Zelensky commemorated the holiday with prayer in Kyiv. Public celebrations are banned. Prayers for peace also came from the Vatican as attendees held Ukrainian flags while Pope Francis denounced the war and loss of life on both sides. Several air raid sirens sounded throughout the day, a reminder of the danger that's become part of everyday life. In another show of support, President Biden announced the largest single monetary aid package so far to Ukraine, $3 billion of weapons and equipment. In a statement, the president said in part, "Today and every day, we stand with the Ukrainian people to proclaim that the darkness that drives autocracy is no match for the flame of liberty that lights the souls of free people everywhere." As the war drudges on, missile strikes overnight targeted Kharkiv. Ukraine also accuses Russia of renewed shelling at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, intentionally putting radioactive dust into the air. The risk of nuclear disaster led several countries asking for peace at another emergency United Nations meeting.
Why on earth is a nuclear facility being used as a staging ground for war by Russian forces?
The UN estimates roughly 5,500 civilians have been killed since the war began on February 24th. More than 6 million refugees have left the country. Brody Carter, CBN News.
Thanks, Brody. Joining us now is CBN News senior international correspondent George Thomas. George, you've spent time in Ukraine and you know these people well. How bittersweet is it for Ukrainians to be celebrating Independence Day while still at war with Russia?
Yeah, I've been talking to friends and contacts in Kyiv, in Mariupol, and folks that are in areas that are besieged by the Russians. And they say, look, listen, the fact that 31 years later, after gaining their independence from the Soviet Union, they are still fighting for freedom again. But I think what is different this time around, and what is different between the Ukrainians and the Russians, Caitlin, is the fact that Ukraine, unlike Russia, is very united like never before. And this is what motivates people. You go on social media, on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter, and Ukrainians are posting. Yesterday was the celebration of the national flag, the blue and the yellow. You get the sense of nationality, and also the reality is that they're fighting for freedom again. And so the difference here is that the Ukrainians are united like never before. The Russians, on the other hand, are wondering what on earth is going on.
What about the church in Ukraine? How's it holding up 6 months into this invasion?
I was talking to a pastor just in the last few days who serves in Ukraine, in Kyiv, the capital city. He's been there since February 24th. I met him when the bombs were falling on the capital city, and he's still there. And the reality, Caitlin, is that it's not just in Kyiv. From Zaporizhzhia to Lviv to Mariupol to Kharkiv to Kramatorsk, all these places where the church has had a powerful influence over the last 31 years, they're still there. Mind you, the church is run by men. Why? Because most of the women, most of the children have fled, and so it's up to the men, to the pastors of the church, to continue shepherding the flock. And the reality is that they continue to minister, to bring humanitarian aid to the conflict areas, to the front lines. It's absolutely incredible, the sense of bravery that you see, the incredible display of bravery. These men who go into the enemy's camp, who go right into the front line to rescue people or to bring humanitarian aid. The church continues, as is the case in all other conflicts, be it the ones that I've covered in Syria, Afghanistan, Nigeria. It is always the church that is at the forefront of helping in the time of need.
What do you think the next 6 months looks like for Ukraine?
I think, the administration's decision to send billions of dollars more on this anniversary, this grim anniversary, is just another indication that the administration, that the United States is in this for the long haul. Look, the amount of money we've given the Ukrainians in the last 6 months has really allowed the Ukrainians to fend off a complete takeover of the country. Remember, the prognostication was that within 3 days, Kyiv would be surrounded. The Zelensky government would be decapitated. Here we are 6 months later. Look, the Russians have made some advancements in the east, but I think the next 6 months you're going to see a continued slog. It's going to be rough. It's going to be deadly. Both sides are going to lose men and women, soldiers as well. But I don't see necessarily a major counteroffensive against the Russians. Basically, you're going to see a standstill. The Ukrainians will hold the line. The Russians are trying to move. You're going to have this back and forth. But eventually, I've made the prediction. I did this several times over the last 6 months. I'm going to predict that the Ukrainians are not only going to retake the eastern part of Ukraine, but they're also going to retake Crimea. And we've seen in the last 3-4 days the incredible attacks, the very bold attacks against this very strategic peninsula on the Black Sea. And I think as you see more money, more equipment, missiles, long-range missiles being poured into Ukraine, it's going to take the battle to the Russians. And unfortunately, this is not going to end anytime soon.